Cuban-born artist Wifredo Lam is a man of many styles, and for the first time, the Boston College McMullen Museum of Art is aiming to explore all of them at once in a new retrospective. WGBH News arts editor Bowen got a tour and has this look into the man behind it all.
Simply put, it's staggering. From beginning to end, the career of Cuban-born artist Wifredo Lam was robust, vigorous, and wildly disparate. He traveled the world and hailed the works of the greats and steeped himself in the cultures that moved him.
He's difficult to categorize. He's a complex man.
With an equally complex beginning, says curator Elizabeth Goizueta, who spent 10 years assembling this Lam retrospective at Boston College's McMullen Museum of Art. Born in 1902, Lam immediately had 4 continents in his blood.
I don't think he had any choice but to remain open as an African, Spanish, Chinese man born in the Caribbean. His godmother was a Santera priestess. His mother was a devout Roman Catholic. That was his normalcy. And I think that he kind of had a quest and a hunger for that and continued to explore that.
Starting in Spain, where he studied at the Prado and was spellbound by the Surrealists.
I don't think he had an agenda per se. I think he became involved emotionally and intellectually with different movements, and from that emotion he painted.
The Spanish Civil War forced Lam to Paris in the 1930s, putting him in close proximity to the artist he held above all others.
And Picasso puts his arm around him and says, "You remind me of somebody I knew long ago. Me."
It was World War II which had forced Lam back to Cuba, and then on to New York, where he took up with the abstract expressionists. He was, Goizueta says, a sponge.
What is so extraordinary about his work is he doesn't get stagnated in one particular period, but yet he's always compelled to move forward and to look at the next period.
For the next 40 years, until his death in 1982, Lam continued to push himself, to explore.
Been maybe pigeonholed as a surrealist or as a Latin Americanist, but I think now he is truly staking his claim as one of the great modernists of the 20th century.
And Emily, I cannot I cannot express enough how much people should go see this show. He is such an extraordinary artist. I'm a little bit embarrassed to say I wasn't as familiar with him.
I'd never heard of him, and I know a lot of the Cubists. I've never heard of him.
And this is how we can save a lot of money, because there are going to be 2 major Lam retrospectives in Europe next year. So this show, which I mentioned, has taken 10 years to curate, and is now, you can see right here at Boston College. But the reason I love this is because it's exhibited chronologically. So you can start at the beginning and see even how at the very early stages of his career, he had all the fundamentals of painting and he was exceptional. And then you move through and you see how his own vocabulary develops as he's working with people like Picasso and the other great artists of his time.
Now, I mean, I was thinking about that because was race an issue for him? I mean, he must have been kind of a one-of-a-kind back then.
Well, like so many stories of this period, race was not an issue because he was in Europe, but he did become fascinated with the negritude movement, which was this fight against French colonial racism and developing their own culture and aesthetic and literary circles. Elizabeth Goizueta describes him as a poet on the canvas. He was so in love with language, and as much as he was into poetry, he put that on the canvas.
All right, looks great. Bowen, thanks so much for that.